All right, we're starting. Well, good morning, good afternoon, almost lunchtime. I know this is one of the hardest times of giving talks because everybody just wants to eat something. So I'll try and make it quick. There's always plenty of time to chat afterwards if you want to know some more. Who am I? I'm Beverly McCann. I'm a cyber analyst consultant with Darktrace. Have been there for like 3 years now, I think. Consulting and advising customers on how to get the best value out of Darktrace. But what we're going to talk about today is how we can use that self-learning AI that with Darktrace, what it is in the core, how we can cover the cloud with that. To give you a little bit of an idea of what I'm going to talk about is, first of all, I'm going to have a bit of an intro of what kind of threats we're actually facing in the cloud today and what are the vulnerabilities that come with that new move into the cloud. Talk a little bit about what our self-learning AI actually is and how it works before I talk about autonomous response. And when I start talking about our real-world threats, then it's 2 more slides after that, and then you know it's going to be over soon and you can go and have lunch. For those of you, I don't know, who has not heard about Darktrace before? Few hands. Fair enough. All good. No judgment there. We're still in the face. But just to give you a quick overview of who we are, we've been founded in 2013 in Cambridge, have been listed on the market last year. So since then, we have had that great opportunity to actually increase our R&D spend and compared, and I always love that comparison, comparing sort of what kind of innovation goes on in the cybersecurity world at the moment, we've actually seen a strong decline in sort of what is being innovated, especially in the last couple of years. However, Darktrace still, we have a huge research center in Cambridge where we keep innovating, and that is being shown with all the 70 plus patents that we have filed at the moment. We have over 6.5 customers by now. I think we're close to 7,000 by now. Just sort of showing that on a global scale, we do have lots of people who do trust and believe in that innovation. But to start off, obviously we have seen that massive move into the cloud. We've seen the expansion and the sophistication of the cloud solutions that are out there, and just walking up through the stands talking about cloud, I mean, it's everywhere. But with that innovation in the cloud system and cloud computing, etc., we do obviously also see a huge increase in sophistication by attackers that trying to leverage these threats that are, these vulnerabilities that are out there. And just looking at this data here from last year, that in the last 18 months, 98% of companies have experienced at least one cloud data breach. And that just sometimes comes from the lack of knowledge of which user has access to what, accidentally leaking or opening up some entryway into your cloud storage to provide attackers with password credentials or with sensitive data. And often it's this lack of visibility and that lack of control of what users can access that leaves companies vulnerable. And with that move into the cloud, and obviously we have seen a huge shift, especially since the whole remote working has started. So there was this massive, okay, we need to get everything into the cloud now. But then, since then, most industries, most companies have tried to play catch up when it comes to security, because they had to make everything available, but they forgot that making everything available might lead to a much, much bigger attack surface. And that is what we've seen these attackers using and trying to exploit, because it just really needs one compromised credential, one compromised user that allows an attacker to really quickly move through the cloud and thereby compromise a huge number of data and access to the supply chain as well. Like, just imagine somebody steals a credential, then logs into their email account, trying to send out all kinds of phishing emails to all the contacts that are in that user's mailbox, can have a huge impact and a huge effect. And we have seen these kind of things happening. Another problem is the complex infrastructure of cloud solutions. And often these infrastructures are coming in a very siloed manner, because everything is in the cloud, but you have no visibility of what's going on in between. You look at everything sort of in a, okay, here's my bucket there, and here's my instance here, and here's my AWS, and here's my Google, and here's my Teams, and here's my Slack and Dropbox. You don't have visibility of what's going on in a global scale, what your users are doing. You just don't know. You lack that visibility. And then obviously, a big problem as well is lack of staff who has the knowledge in cloud computing, who knows actually what they're doing. There's so much innovation coming out in this sector that it's really hard to keep up with what's new and what needs to be done to be able to secure that cloud. And I mentioned poor visibility, often limited control. You give your data to a cloud provider. How do you make sure that they secure your data? How do you know what they do to make sure that it's secure? It's often giving that responsibility away, and lacking the control yourself to say, I want to know what's happening and I want to be able to secure it myself. And yeah, hyperconnectivity. Everything is sort of, once you're sort of in the cloud, it's really easy to jump around and then go from the cloud, even on-prem, go and get into your data center if you still have one, or if it's all sitting in the cloud. So a lot of these have been challenges that have been arising, and people are slowly getting to realize that this is something they need to look at and really take care of. If we look at these traditional defenses, it comes in two ways. So either you have your native security controls that come with the cloud tool that you're using, but the problem with those is that it really is unable to detect these advanced and contextualized threats of, having mentioned it earlier, having these siloed approaches. You can have your security for your AWS, you can have your security for your Microsoft 365, but what if one account is compromised and then jumps over into the other? Will you be able to notice that? Will you be able to figure that out and connect the dots of what's actually going on? Or will you only realize it when it's already too late? That's why these novel and cross-platform threats are so difficult to realize with these native security controls. But obviously we have seen third-party vendors are trying to get their own security systems in place as well. But the problem is that most tools, and be that in the cloud, be that for the network traffic, we see this all the time. These third-party controls and they rely on past attack data. They rely on something that they have seen before somewhere in the past, so they can implement that in the future. But they therefore cannot realize when there's an unknown, when there's a 0 day. They can just not find these because they solely rely on these past attack data and this preconceived idea of bad. So we know if there is a connection to this endpoint, it's all based on rules and signatures. And I think the number is, I think AWS has said that there are over 1 million AWS accounts, and at least 96% of companies have some kind of data somewhere in the cloud. So you cannot really, it's nothing you can stop from happening. It is what it is in these days. So how are we trying to protect customers and their data in the cloud or elsewhere? We use self-learning AI. So rather than relying on attack data, we start to learn what is normal behavior within your cloud instance, within your cloud environment, within all of your digital data. And it doesn't thereby matter what the data is. We're completely data agnostic. It really understands the dynamic behind cloud infrastructures. It will continuously learn. So it's not that we're with other systems where they say, we'll take a baseline. After 2 months, this is how your system looks like. And based on that, we'll create some rules. No, constant self-learning AI that will understand what is normal for you, for your business as a whole, and not for another business next door or another business in your industry sector. It will learn what is normal for you. And it can obviously also combine it for hybrid environments where you have some stuff on-prem and some stuff in the cloud, but also protects the full range of platforms. So to get that single pane of glass picture, I know people probably hate that single pane of glass stuff, but it doesn't matter where your data is. We can pull all the information from everywhere in the cloud, combine that with each other, and thereby get the full picture of what's happening everywhere. Also autonomous. It is autonomous. It does its anomaly detection and its respond capabilities on its own, fully autonomous. It decides what the right action is to take here. And to furthermore elaborate on that, since we have evolved this normal understanding across the business, which user is logging in from which location, how many emails does the user send, what kind of data do they access in that SharePoint, how often, what time, who is communicating with each other. And any deviation from that normal behavior will be understood and will be said, hey, hang on a minute, that doesn't look quite right. I think something is really going on there. And it can be as subtle as, oh yeah, you just have an unusual login from a different ASN that just doesn't really fit with the company. It's still in the same country, but just slightly off. And, oh, somebody created a new email rule. Could obviously be somebody just created a new folder and said, oh, everything that comes from Beverly will be put right into junk. Don't want to see that. But it could also be indicative of a sophisticated attacker trying to hide themselves within normal traffic and trying to mask themselves by not letting the normal users see what's happening. It can specifically target the bad behavior with this autonomous response and continues to monitor the incident. So a big problem is often that when you have some kind of response capability, often it's relied on sort of if, when, then rules. But you cannot, in a dynamic cloud environment, you cannot use these rules because often it's either too strict, so you interrupt normal business behavior, you don't allow certain things to come through, and thereby disrupt your normal business, or you do it too subtle, too soft, so that an attacker has free range to do whatever they want. And it can therefore take really precise and proportionate action. So it won't just like force any lockout or will stop any kind of data transfer as soon as it sees it, but it will take really surgically precise action so that everything else that the self-learning AI has learned to be normal can continue as normal. However, the one bad connection to this one unusual endpoint where the data is trying to be transferred will be stopped. And yeah, just to reiterate, it doesn't matter where the data is. We can sit on top of all of your cloud, be that, Microsoft 365, Salesforce, Okta, Zoom, doesn't matter. We have seen many attacks that really go cross-platform, and only by having that visibility of what's going on in the one and going on in the other, all by themselves maybe not look really bad, but in combination they are so unusual that it then shows that there is an attack that is happening. Good on time. we're at the examples now, so soon done. One example I would like to show you is an account takeover that we've seen in Darktrace. It was a user or an attacker that bypassed the Azure impossible travel rule. We saw one account, one user trying to log in from a location that it had never logged in before. Also, nobody in the company ever logged in from a different location, while already being logged in somewhere else. The attacker then infiltrated the user's email environment and started these new processing rules as to every incoming and outgoing email to be moved into a different folder, thereby trying to hide that the attacker is in the compromise within that user's account. We did alert to that. The company was then able to log out the user and restore everything. But they could lock the account. But would if, for example, the autonomous response been active, it could have already stopped it at the first login and kicked the user out and not even get it to as far as the attacker going into the inbox. Another one was an accidental insider threat, which can obviously be intentional or accidental. And in this case, a junior DevOps engineer tried to, or thought he was downloading an update, accidentally updated downloaded cryptocurrency mining malware. And then the malware began to beacon, and within, what does it say? Within under 15 seconds, the attacker tried to move and managed to reach 20 different servers and then deploy the malware then. We did identify the infection really early on at the download already. And again, we could tell the team to escalate the situation, but with the autonomous response, if it would have been active, it could have stopped it right at the beginning. And the last threat find that we saw was again, a user that was in his Google Share folder and at the same time was also logged in at a SharePoint, both from unusual locations that they've never done before, also bypassing this impossible travel rule. And then also the attacker then started to try and exfiltrate data from this SharePoint, try and upload it somewhere else to an endpoint that we've also never seen before, anybody in the business using before, and could have saved. I think there's just a quick event log that shows some of the file names like accounts payable, new contacts, system layout, disaster recovery plan. Like, you don't want these data to be lost and other people seeing them. And with that, I am done. Thank you very much. I'm very open to questions, but I'm also very happy if people want to eat something, then you can come to me during lunch. I'm upstairs going to eat as well. But yeah, any questions?
Very, very quickly, I don't want to make anybody die of hunger. You give a very clear view of how you actually use self-learning models to profile, but basically create a personal profile or customized profiles for each application. That's fine. What happens though when you actually get an outlier? Are you using self-learning, because basically the way you described it there, and I may be misinterpreting it, it looks like a fairly deterministic response once it's been found. But obviously, particularly if it's a multi-vector or broad spectrum attack across quite a large attack surface, are you using any non-deterministic approaches to actually try and qualify, quantify, and validate what is actually, identify the scale and scope of what's actually happening, if it's a much bigger attack? Or what are you asking for?
Yeah, so we can definitely, we obviously look at very individual anomalies, but as soon as there is a accumulation, we have other models that sit on top of these that can then sort of justify, like, ooh, this looks like lateral movement. This looks like a lot of, this looks like an initial breach compromise. Like there are models that sit on top of the anomalies that we detect that can then classify and compile that in that. Another thing that I haven't showed is we do actually have the so-called AI Analyst. So on top of every anomaly that is detected, we have trained an AI to carry out investigation and triaging. So without having to sit in front of your laptop 24/7, that is done by the AI Analyst. It will continuously investigate every anomaly, thereby basically taking over the work of a level 1 to level 2 analyst. And if it finds something interesting, even if it's like a multi-stage or a cross-platform, multi-user compromise, it will combine and put that together in a report with all the technical details, a summary of the findings, and then you can just download it and save it as a PDF.
Is that what's driving your autonomous, what extracts your autonomous response?
No, that is sort of the separate. That is
at a lower level.
Yeah, so we have the detection bit, which is the anomaly detection using the self-learning AI. We have the investigation bit, which is the AI Analyst, and we have the response part, that is the autonomous response, which takes actions autonomously depending on what the anomaly is that has been detected. Yeah. Yeah.
Just sort of following on from that,
Yeah.
I'm interested in finding out a bit more about what the feedback loop is. So how does your AI Analyst or your autonomous response know when it's got it right or wrong? So you don't suffer from false positives.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. Obviously, when something is immediately changing, AI Analyst might, or Darktrace might flag it first as, oh, this is new, I've not seen this before. But since it is a continuous self-learning, it will notice if something is being more established, like, oh, we have a new cloud instance, or we have new users entered our business. It will learn that, and thereby the curve for false positives might flatten. You do have complete visibility into all the modeling that is happening. So you can somehow also teach the system, say, this is my finance department. We allow them to use Dropbox for whatever reason. But so whenever somebody does any compliance things that have to do with Dropbox, you say, I don't want to be notified about that. So you can do some fine tuning and some feedback loop yourself, but the AI is actually clever enough to learn new behavior to become normal. Yeah.
Can I just follow up? Because again, is there a human involved there? Because that's in advance, using Dropbox, but I'm thinking of a situation where something happens that is not normal, a world event, a news story, or something that creates a different pattern that's completely authentic. And if your autonomous response suddenly starts shutting things down, how does a human tell it not to do that, and how does the system remember?
You completely have absolute control over what you allow the autonomous response to do or not. We have different categories that can range from, I want the autonomous response to only look at external threats. I wanted to only react on internal threats. I only wanted to do compliance stuff. So you can customize that reaction. Plus, there is a trust journey, obviously, for you to see. So first, when we come into a deployment, we will go into passive mode. That means no actions will be taken whatsoever. We'll just tell you this is what the autonomous solution would have liked to do. Then you can turn it active, but into human confirmation mode. So you have your mobile app, you get a push notification saying, hey, I think there's some weird stuff happening. Can I please take an action? And it takes the human into the loop that says, okay, yes, you can. And then you can also customize and said, once you trust that, you can go autonomous, but only on the weekends and only out of hours. During the day, I want to still be in the loop. So you have complete control as to how quickly you want to trust the AI, basically.
That's why in both case examples you gave, you said if autonomous response had been turned on.
So obviously those are different product categories. So in these cases, or most often, we see these kind of events happening during proof of values that we run. And obviously not everyone is either having this autonomous response product, or they are not quite yet in their trust journey that they haven't had it autonomously activated. So yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. 5 minutes, shall we go up, have some food? But otherwise, I don't know, it sounds like I'm really starving, right? But yeah, please come upstairs. We have a couple lovely chaps up there who love to talk. I'm here around for the rest of the day as well if you want to have another chat with me. Cool, thanks so much.
Thank you.